Hello, just a little over a week after the election in which former President Trump is now President-elect Trump, and we saw more of a red wave certainly than we saw in 2022. And as Democrats try to evaluate where they went wrong and Republicans try to determine exactly how they went right and solidify their gains and set up governance accordingly, I do think it's important to keep in mind several general principles that may easily be overlooked. And that I think, in fact, former President Trump has wrong in some respects, and the Democrats have wrong in many respects. From what I've seen so far, the Democrats are not doing a very good job of analyzing why they lost and the direction they need to go from here. But I want to express concern that Republicans also be honest about what they were given a mandate for and where they should go from here. And one of the things I'd like to mention right off the top is that we reflect on how, in fact, we are advancing the positions that we hold. I think, particularly on the world stage, but even within the confines of the United States of America herself, we've lost sight of the fact that America was founded on ideals that took hundreds, even thousands of years to come to fruition in the context of religion and philosophy, such that the United States of America was born. The degree to which, as the sole superpower on the world stage, America has turned to military might rather than reasoned argument to advance her views and present them and, in effect, force them on the rest of the world is something that ought to concern us and that we need to reconsider if we want to be serious about advancing ideals in a way that supports those ideals rather than contradicts them. And in the same way, in the context of the overwhelming win by former President Trump, I think that conservatives and those who may not be conservative or Republican, but who are simply distraught over the direction that the country was going under Democratic leadership, ought to be honest about how they approach governance, the degree to which they try to use law and force in areas where uh, consolation and discussion and reason ought to be used. Another thing I'd like to suggest is that I'm somewhat concerned that there might be too much warmongering being exerting influence, I should say, over former President Trump and President-elect Trump as we move into the Trump administration. I do think that the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about has taken over to a degree that is unhealthy for the country and for the world. And while I think we ought to have a strong defense, I don't think that a strong defense necessitates fomenting or being involved in major conflicts or even minor conflicts all over the world. If we believe that people ought to be allowed to work out their own differences, then we need to let them work out their own differences in any way they choose, lest we become embroiled in things that are really none of our business as a nation. With respect to what's going on in the country, I do think that things have gone too far in a leftward direction in many areas. I think that, particularly at the university level, there are many ideas that have taken root that have no bearing in logic and reason. And one might wonder how they took root to begin with and how we can deal with the fact that the fruits of those roots are detrimental to the direction that the nation as a whole ought to go, particularly the degree to which Americans are fairly willing to live and let live when it comes to adults, but have been uh, perhaps asleep at the wheel from a conservative perspective when it comes to the degree to which liberal ideas and many conservatives, Christians in particular, and even conservative Muslims and Jews and others would say immoral ideas have taken hold in the left wing of the party and in certain of the institutions, education, etc. I think there's a need to push back against that civilly and in a degree as much as possible, with love, with respect, but without compromising some basic values, particularly when it comes to how we're handling children and how we are being perhaps dishonest, even at the highest levels, with respect to the positions that have been taken and the way that things are being led. So anyway, just a few ideas for us to think about. Another big one that I think we're going to have to address is how dishonest we're being with respect to the national debt and the kind of sacrifices we can either choose to make or will be forced upon us when everything collapses. I do think it's a good time to think, particularly in that regard, for the older generations, of which I'm obviously a part. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So anyway, I look forward to working with you and thinking with about these ideas with you going forward. Thank you very much for your time. Bye bye. Thank you very much for your time. I've got a couple other videos listed here if you'd like to take a look at those. And as I'd like to discuss issues related to politics, religion, society, and how in the world we're supposed to understand ourselves and life in the world. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye bye.